BC Premier David Eby is weighing in on a decision to grant a conditional discharge to a man who killed his 3 children nearly 20 years ago. He is calling the move deeply concerning and criticizing the justice system.
The not criminally responsible by reason of mental disorder provisions under the criminal code have resulted in a system that continually re-victimizes the family that was affected by Mr. Schoenborn's horrific crimes. That system is not working. And we need to make sure that the family members who are living with the consequences of Mr. Schoenborn's actions are supported better than they are currently under this federal regime.
Eby says he will speak with the federal justice minister about the changes to the criminal code. Allan Schoenborn stabbed and smothered his 3 young children back in 2008. He was found not criminally responsible for the murders due to a mental disorder. Schoenborn, who now goes by the name Ken John Johnson, will live under supervision and report to a psychiatric clinic during his conditional release. Okay, I want to get some more legal analysis on Schoenborn's conditional release here. And I've got Kyla Lee here, a criminal defense lawyer, joining me now. Thank you very much for coming into studio.
Thank you.
So Premier Eby, we're hearing him now criticize the legal system, calling Schoenborn's conditional discharge deeply concerning. What do you make of the Premier's comments?
I think that the comments are inappropriate. This is the function of the rule of law, and the Premier, being just the Premier of the province and a lawyer, should respect the institutions that we have in place. The BC Review Board is not going to release somebody on a conditional discharge unless they are satisfied that they are not posing a significant risk to the public safety. And questioning that decision-making process that's enshrined in them under the criminal code does undermine confidence in the justice system.
You mentioned he is a lawyer by trade prior to becoming a politician. In fact, he was once heavily involved with the Pivot Legal Society and head of the BC Civil Liberties Association. But it's not the first time that we have heard the Premier make criticisms, really the same kind of criticism about the review process that has led to conditional release, that has led to violence in the community. And that's not to suggest that that is necessarily what would happen here, but I know that those are the concerns. So given that, does it surprise you that he would once again weigh in?
It doesn't surprise me that he would once again weigh in, but I think we need to recognize that the vast majority of people who are granted discharges from this system do not end up in the system again. They comply with their conditions, they are given an absolute discharge, and we never see them in the criminal justice system again. Okay.
Can you talk to me about the process of getting to a point where you get a conditional release in a case like this? I remember when these 3 children died, and it was a story that really rocked the country. And to the idea that we are to this point, I think there's a lot of people who are watching and wondering, how does something like it happen, that there can be a conditional release of the man who took these lives?
What the BC Mental Health Review Board is going to look at is, under the criminal code, whether or not there is a substantial likelihood that the public safety is going to be compromised by release. The fact that this is a conditional and not an absolute discharge suggests there's some, still concern for the public safety that doesn't get him to the point of complete release. There are still annual reviews that are going to take place, and there have been since the point in time that he was found not criminally responsible. An annual review in front of the review board to determine his progress and to hopefully one day, with people in this system, get them to the point where they can be released back into society.
Do you envision that? I mean, that's what we heard from the family spokesperson yesterday. That the family, the surviving family, are very concerned that this would lead to an absolute release, which would be sort of the next step moving forward. And I suppose when you talk about the system, that is the end goal. So that could happen, and that could happen as soon as a year.
It could happen, yes. It could happen within a year. We have to recognize, though, that the system itself is designed to mitigate the risk. The conditions are in place, there's going to be monitoring, and if there's any indication that there's some, tendency towards violence that would compromise public safety, he's not going to get that absolute discharge a year from now.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of the safeguards that are put in place as part of this conditional? I mean, this has to be at the discretion of and approved by the director as to where he is living, though at the moment we don't know any of the specifications to that, like proximity to children, single dwelling residence, and he has to, go back to the hospital in order to do so. Is that enough?
I think so. There's also no contact orders with the surviving family members, and there's an order to keep the peace and be of good behavior. And when you have these conditions hanging over your head, it is a separate criminal offense to violate those conditions. So there is the threat of an actual criminal prosecution where there's no not criminally responsible option out of it for breaching these conditions.
So he's going to continue to receive regular reviews unless he actually, I mean, in the event of an absolute discharge, then is there any, there's nothing. That's it.
That would end the matter, and he would be, just like you or me, in society functioning as a normal adult.
Do you, I mean, the other thing we didn't learn yesterday, or in the last couple of days since this has come out, we know what the conditions are, but we don't know the reasons for that. And even those who were there at the actual hearing, I mean, they heard the arguments back and forth. We don't know why the review board made this decision to move to conditional discharge. What would you be looking for when those reasons come out?
I'd be looking for an explanation of why they've determined that there isn't a substantial public safety risk, what programming maybe has been accomplished in the last year. We know that historically he's been sort of resistant to programming. He's been had violent outbursts in the past, so his attitude towards the incident, his attitude towards the treatment that he needs, those types of things I think are really going to inform the likelihood that he's going to be able to comply with the conditions and eventually get to a point of being considered rehabilitated.
And explaining all of this and knowing the details of the killings of these three children and all of the emotions that are, especially in the province of British Columbia, around this. Are you surprised at their reaction? Because it has, you talked about when we first came in, you said this is sure getting a lot of attention. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me that this is getting a lot of attention. I mean, this is the deaths of children. That strikes everybody very deeply emotionally. And this is somebody who I think a lot of people, they're not familiar with our mental health system and they're not familiar with the safeguards that are put in place. And so there is that apprehension that when somebody who has done something as horrific as this is released into the public, they're concerned about their safety. But we have to have confidence in our institutions.
Okay, Kyla Lee, criminal defense lawyer, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Especially for coming into studio. Thanks.